On January 26, 1700, at approximately 9 p.m., a massive earthquake ripped through the Cascadia subduction zone from Vancouver Island to Northern California. It generated a huge tsunami and massive amounts of shaking. How do we know exactly when that earthquake happened? Let's go through the evidence, but first, let's talk a little bit about what's happening off the coast of the Pacific Northwest. Off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, the Juan de Fuca plate is sliding or subducting beneath the North American plate along this huge boundary called a megathrust. As this is happening, the North American plate gets compressed and coastal areas rise, lifting up the forests. Eventually, the friction between these two plates is going to be overcome. Then the coastal areas will drop down and the leading edge of the North American plate will slide upwards, displacing the water above it, causing a tsunami to flow out in all directions, across the ocean and onto the land, carrying both sand and debris that gets deposited. It also drowns those trees, creating what's known as a ghost forest. The first hint that something had happened in this region came from Native American oral history. In the tribes in the region, they say that 7 generations ago there was a huge earthquake and tsunami which swept away villages and lifted canoes into the trees. The ghost forests themselves gave their second hint. All of the trees, when you look at the tree rings, it shows that they died between the fall of 1699 and the spring of 1700. USGS geologist Brian Atwater went into the area and looked in the coastal marshes. You see, he had worked on tsunamis in Alaska and Chile, and what he found was this classic tsunami geology deposit. So those were all great hints, but how do we know that it happened at 9 p.m.? That is like so oddly specific, right? The final piece of the puzzle came from over 4,000 miles away in Japan. There were abundant written records in Japan that an orphan tsunami, or a tsunami without apparent earthquake, swept across Japan from north to south on January 27, 1700. That earthquake came from Cascadia, and because we know how long it took to cross the ocean, we know exactly when that earthquake occurred. The geologic record tells us that earthquakes along this boundary happen every 300 to 500 years, give or take. We don't know when the next earthquake will happen, but we really need to be ready for when it does.